So let's begin with this series on Adobe Animate, and I am going to mainly be focusing on 2D animation and related things essentially. So let's just go over the interface first. The interface is quite simple, not very complicated. So you have these two buttons over here, so home and learn. This is the welcome screen essentially, which you would face, and this may look a little different in your version of Animate if you're on a more recent version, but I am on let's see the version. I am on version 20 and the build is 1,74,000. No, what is this? This is 17,400. So that's the build. If your build is a little different, then this may look a little different for you. Now in the learn section, you could go ahead and learn different things about Adobe Animate. This is like one of those tutorials which Adobe offers you, right? And if you come to the home section here, what you see is that you have essentially few categories over here. So you have character animation, social, game, education, ads, web, and advanced. All right, so the interesting thing is that all these categories cater to some individual industry in itself. So if I'm talking about character animation, this would basically be catering to all sorts of motion graphics, all sorts of TV animation, the cartoon shows that you watch on TV, so all that. Social media animations you can do in this section. You can even develop some 2D games. You can develop some e-learning content in Animate. You can create some ads. Now by ads, what I mean is that those ads which you see on websites, you would have these ads getting animated on the side, vertical, and in the landscape format. So that is one. Then for web, you could develop some web-based applications, and in the advanced section you have some even more advanced stuff going on here. But for the purposes of this series, I will be mainly sticking to character animation, and then we will proceed from there on. Okay, so to start with the character animation category, what you see here are few presets of the document sizes that you can basically start off with. And the best part is that Animate is a vector application, so it doesn't really mean that you are basically bound by a particular document size. Later on, if there is a requirement, then you can always scale up. So that's a different video that I'll be making on for that. So let's we'll take a look at it in a bit. So let's park it for now. Now we have HD, the standard format, and full HD and 4K formats here. So let's just go ahead and click on any one of them. Now once you select any one of them, what you see here on the right is the width by height details, and there's a frame rate. All right, and there's this is the coding part of it, which says action script 3.0. Now based on your requirements, you could have a different document size that you may want to work with, but let's just start off with this size and say create. Now one more thing before moving on, you have some sample files available here. So if you want to quickly take a look at what is possible inside of Animate CC, then you can always just hover over these thumbnails and you would see little animations going on. So yeah, nice to have. Now let's just go ahead and click on the create button here. and once you click on that button, you are welcomed by this interface. Now, at the first glance, it looks quite simple to me, but it may or may not look simple to you. That could be a different situation, but let me just quickly go over all the components and all the parts, and let me just explain you what different things do. So on the left, what you see is the toolbar. All right, and we are going to basically using these toolbars, or these tools rather, quite often during our animation journey. Here what we see are the layers. This is the layers panel, and right next to it is the timeline where all the animation is going to happen. On top of it are some animation timeline controls, the playback controls and things like that. This is the zoom in and zoom out control for the timeline itself, so you could easily use the slider to zoom in or zoom out. Right side here we have the panel well, and we can move them around and make space for different situations. We can scale things around, we can move things around, we can even change the position of the menus, and you know, that is also an option. For some animators, they would like to work with this layout. Some animators may prefer this kind of a layout where you have the timeline like that on the side. So there could be different situations. Now if you have just ended up messing up your entire workspace, it's a good idea to come back to the window menu here and come down to workspaces and just come down here and say reset. So whatever workspace you are in, that's going to just go back to its default whatever the workspace is. All right, you could even come to the workspace menu here, and you can open up different workspaces from here as well, so that's also an option. All right, so that being done, let's just quickly go to the basic workspace, which is a lot simpler, no nonsense kind of stuff, less cluttered, so that you can probably be a little eased out. All right, so that's what it is. Now when I say basic workspace, these are the most basic functions that you're going to need ever, and they have actually categorized it, they have put some thought behind it, because it's kind of true in a way, because we have move tool, then we have free transform tool. So I'll just quickly go over and tell you what these tools are doing. If I just take a rectangle and I just drag and draw a rectangle here, this is the move tool. So I'm going to just select this and move the rectangle. Now you may notice that some part of it got left behind, and that's basically because the stroke and the fill are two separate entities inside Flash. Not to mention that they are in fact two separate entities in other softwares as well, but what I mean is that you can actually take them apart, right? And this is something that is very unique about Flash. You cannot do that inside any other application. Yes, you can switch off the fill or you can switch off the stroke. That is also one and the same thing, but in this is how you get this added advantage. All right, so what I just did was I just hovered over one of the sides, and what you get is a curve option where you can just very easily go in and drag in or drag out to make a curve or bend it from one side depending on your design requirements. Now if I just select this again and come down to the second option. This is the free transform. So if I just select this, I will get a rotation option here. I can scale this up in any direction that I want. Likewise, I can use Shift and Alt to constrain the scaling from one end only. And yeah, so that's basically it. So this is what the free transform tool is going to give you. Now when you click on free transform tool, if you look here at the bottom, you will get some more options. So we are getting free transform, rotate and skew. That's another option. So I can rotate and I can even skew it. Okay, so that's another way of saying distort. This is a kind of a distortion. Then you have only scale, then you have only distort, and then if you go to distort, you can individually basically go about putting where you want to basically position your shape. Okay, and then lastly you have envelope. So in the envelope setting, what you can do is, if let's say if you want to warp around some kind of a circular object, so you can do that very easily using envelope, and we are going to just look at that in a bit. So hang on with me. We're just trying to cover up the basics here. So I'm just going to select this and delete it. Next is the brush. So if I just select the brush, instantly some more options light up, right? And I am using a graphic tablet. I'm using a Wacom graphic tablet. So that is why I'm getting these two options also. And this is where you are going to get some pressure sensitivity. All right, so you're getting thick to thin, strokes going on there. So quite nice feature. Next up are these shapes. You have the circle, the square. We have already just gone through them. Now next one is this line option. Okay, so you could basically go about drawing some lines there. Quite simple, nothing complex there. All right, so you could use line drawing method also. Then you have text, which is quite self-explanatory. What you could do is just click on this and tap here once, and then type out your text. And if this is going in a vertical direction, you could just expand it. Okay, now let's go and essentially look at the paint bucket options. So we just have a paint bucket here, but what if I wanted to change the color of the stroke? So if I want to change the color of the fill, I can pick it up from here by just clicking on these color chips and changing it. But then if I want to change the color of the stroke, I can click here and then change that, right? But it's not having any effect. So I need to just come back, double click on it so that all the sides of the stroke is selected, and then probably go ahead and change the color, right? So that is essentially how you do it. Now there's another way of doing it, and that's by using the hotkeys on your keyboard. The hotkey for using for activating the fill is essentially K, and that brings up the fill option. All right, and for activating the stroke, the hotkey is S. All right, now you may wonder, why would I use this? Because I'm not getting any option to change the color, or the color picker is not there. Well, I could use the I key to pick up or activate the eyedropper tool and take a fill color from here. That gets selected and that gets changed. And if I just select the stroke color here and I activate it here and I select the S key, which is for the stroke, I could basically turn this around. Yep. All right, so you see the white stroke there. Okay, so that's basically about the toolbar. Now there are more controls in other workspaces, so I'm just going to go over it in the next session. The classic, the debug. We're not going to go much into debug because that's more related to the programming side of things. I'm not this session, these series are not really targeted towards the coding side. So let's look at it in the next session. All right, so see you there.